Out of everyone present, Taoist Hu Yan was the only one who remained composed in the wake of this revelation, as he had already previously witnessed Hanli's mantra-treasured axis. Basked in the golden light, Hanli was able to fly out of the go-board projection with ease, and he appeared beside Feng Tiandu's duo in the blink of an eye. A hint of alarm and fear flashed through Feng Tiandu's eyes, and a layer of black light surfaced over his body. But it was only able to flash at an extremely low frequency as he fought with all his might to struggle free from the surrounding golden ripples. A layer of grey light appeared over Xianxia's body as well, releasing a burst of corrosive law powers that began to eat away at the surrounding golden ripples. However, these golden ripples were filled with bursts of incredibly formidable Time Law powers, and they remained completely unmoved in the face of the opposing law powers. "Is that all you've got, Elder Feng? In that case, it's my turn," Hanli declared in a cold voice, then casually swept a sleeve through the air. 2 streaks of azure light shot out of his sleeve, revealing themselves to be a pair of tiny azure swords, and they were able to pierce through the protective spiritual light around the bodies of Feng Tiandu's duo with ease, before punching through their glabellas with a pair of dull thumps. A walnut-sized hole appeared in each of their glabellas, but not even a single drop of blood flowed out. The two were still moving slowly along their original trajectories, but the light in their eyes was gradually fading. Hanli's expression remained unchanged as he swept his sleeve through the air once again, releasing a burst of azure light that swept over the remains of the duo, drawing out their storage tools, the immortal treasures that they carried with them, and a pair of nascent souls before carrying them up his sleeve. After that, he made a hand seal, and the mantra-treasured axis behind him vanished into his body at his behest. The surrounding golden ripples also faded, and with that, everything was returned to normal. Feng Tiandu and Xianxia's bodies fell onto the ground with a dull thud, and it seemed that they had been slain in the blink of an eye. Not long ago, Feng Tiandu and Xianxia had been arguably the 2 most threatening figures out of everyone present. But all of a sudden, they had been reduced to a pair of corpses. Everyone drew a collective sharp breath upon seeing this, and they all turned to Hanli with incredulity and wariness in their eyes. Even Taoist Hu Yan was very much taken aback to see this, and he couldn't help but chuckle to himself in amusement. Hanli took a glance at everyone else, and his brows furrowed ever so slightly. Having just displayed his true power to so many people, this could certainly spell trouble for him in the future. However, a sense of pride then welled up in his heart. Back when he first entered the northern glacial immortal region, he was constantly being hunted by enemies more powerful than himself, so he was perpetually having to be cautious in everything that he did, not daring to let down his guard even for a moment, in case he suffered the same fate as before. However, now that he had reached the mid-golden immortal stage and mastered the laws of time, he didn't need to fear any golden immortal cultivator. Furthermore, he had already devised a plan for what he was going to do once he left the infernal frost immortal manor, so he didn't have to worry about these people. After the golden ripples faded, Jin Tong was also able to move freely once again, and she glowered at the pair of bodies on the ground as she protested. "Why did you kill them, Uncle? I told you I wanted to kill them myself. I gave you a chance already, but you weren't able to capitalize, so you can't blame me," Hanli replied with a wry smile, and before Jin Tong had a chance to reply, he swept a sleeve through the air to release a burst of azure light that swept her up before flying toward the edge of the palace. However, he had only just risen up into the air when he suddenly stopped in his tracks, then cast his gaze toward the green pill cauldron with a peculiar look in his eyes. The cauldron had suddenly begun shaking again amid a loud rumbling sound, and the white flames beneath it suddenly reared up significantly, enveloping the entire bottom half of the cauldron. An incredibly heated aura spread forth in all directions, causing the air temperature in the palace to spike drastically, and the surrounding space shimmered and warped, while the ground near the cauldron began to slowly melt. The grey statues seemed to be quite fearful of these white flames, and they hurriedly sprang back in retreat. As a result, The yellow go-board projection that they had released also faded. At this point, everyone had gotten far away from the cauldron, and the grey statues had also flown back to their original spots on either side of the palace. Everyone else in the distance was also quite shocked to see this, and all of their attention was immediately refocused on the cauldron. The spirit patterns on the cauldron began to release bursts of green light, and the lid of the cauldron was trembling incessantly as thick pillars of white smoke erupted forth in all directions. Dull, thunderous rumbling was also ringing out within the cauldron, but it was quickly able to stabilize itself again. Immediately thereafter, a loud ringing sound rang out from within the cauldron, and the remaining 3 dragons began to glow with radiant 5-coloured light, indicating that more pills were about to take shape, much to everyone's elation and befuddlement. Prior to this, the release of each batch of pills had been punctuated by a cool-down interval. But on this occasion, the last 3 pills had only just emerged a moment ago, yet the final 3 pills were already about to take shape. However, everyone then quickly realized that this could be explained by that sudden eruption of white flames from beneath the cauldron. Abruptly fanning the flames during the pill refinement process could indeed accelerate the formation of the pill, but it was an extremely risky maneuver that could easily result in the pills being ruined altogether. The world's origin chi above the palace began to churn once again, and countless golden clouds converged to form an enormous vortex. 3 bursts of silver light descended out of the vortex before striking the roof of the palace with tremendous force, and once again the same clash of golden and silver light began to unfold. A few seconds later, a dull thump rang out in the sky, and all of the silver light faded away, as did the golden light within the palace. Immediately thereafter, everyone pounced at the cauldron again, but this time they didn't get too close. At this point, everyone had already gained some experience, and they had determined how far a distance they had to maintain from the cauldron in order to avoid triggering the grey statues. Before long, the 3 dragons on the pill cauldron began to glow even more radiantly, following which a high zenith pill flew out of each of their mouths. Everyone immediately converged toward the pill cauldron once again, and just like before, a multitude of spirit domains were summoned to encompass the entire palace. Even though Hunley had already secured 2 high zenith pills up to this point, it certainly couldn't hurt to have more, and he was just about to rush at the cauldron as well, when a burst of grey light suddenly shot out of his body before hurtling toward the cauldron. The grey light contained the soul-nurturing burner that the soul fragment was housed in, but the talismans adhered to the burner had already become dull and devoid of luster, clearly having been rendered ineffective. Hunley was very much taken aback to see this, and he hurriedly swept a hand through the air, conjuring a giant golden palm projection that made a grab for the streak of grey light, but all it managed to catch was an afterimage. The streak of grey light was astonishingly fast, reaching the cauldron in the blink of an eye, as if through instantaneous teleportation, and it seemed to have been completely unaffected by all of the spirit domains in the area. The streak of grey light swept up the 3 high zenith pills like lightning, then continued to fly onward, appearing above the golden chair just an instant later. All of this had taken place in the blink of an eye, and everyone immediately stopped cold in their tracks with stunned looks on their faces. Immediately thereafter, the soul-nurturing burner abruptly exploded, and the soul fragment drifted out from within. "I knew I could count on you, kid!" The soul fragment chortled with glee as it took a glance at Han Li, then flew into the body of the living corpse seated on the golden chair, taking the 3 high zenith pills with it. All of a sudden, 9 golden stone pillars erupted out of the ground near the chair, and a burst of golden light rose up from the stone pillars to form a thick golden light barrier that encompassed the chair and the living corpse within. Bursts of golden light were flashing over the light barrier, giving it an indestructible appearance, while a layer of rippling grey light emerged over the living corpse's body. Even through the golden light barrier, everyone could clearly sense a burst of vitality rising up within the living corpse. Right at this moment, 2 figures arrived on the scene, then landed beside the golden chair. It was the two Southern Dawn race golden immortals, and both of them had excited looks on their faces. All of a sudden, 3 golden puppets appeared to stand in the way of the 2 golden immortals, and they each threw a punch, sending 3 thick bolts of golden lightning hurtling toward the duo. "Piss off!" the elderly woman yelled as a flurry of dark red law threads shot forth, then converged to form a dark red blade of light that swept through the air while giving off a burst of tremendous law power fluctuations. Hunley's pupils immediately contracted slightly upon seeing this. He could sense that this burst of law powers wasn't inferior to his time law powers. The dark red blade of light abruptly sped up, flying through the bodies of the 3 golden puppets as a dark red shadow, and the 3 bolts of golden lightning shuddered momentarily before exploding violently. The 3 puppets were also stopped cold in their tracks before splitting apart at the waist and falling to the ground in a lifeless fashion. The dark red blade of light continued onward without pause, striking the golden light barrier with tremendous force, causing the light barrier to ripple violently, while the entire palace also shuddered. However, just a moment later, the golden light barrier fell still again.